suppose the big talking point out of this week was the 11-day mandatory concussion stand down that has been implemented by the NRL. It kind of follows suit. The AFL's done this for a few years. Concussion's been a massive talking point,
especially this week.
With a sport that we love in the NFL for a number of years, and it just keeps slipping into the Aussie rhetoric. Sean, what's your understanding of this new rule? What's your take on it?
Yeah, well, we might flick to Jimmy in a second for the official, but I think the main bit that you missed there was the Category 1. So I guess the best way to see a Category 1 during the game is like a guy goes down and then the wobbly legs gets up, stumbles around, which the NFL did a very similar thing this year, which immediately ruled those guys out. They're no longer to participate. So same sort of concept here that, if the independent doctor reckons you've got a Cat 1, you're out of the game, and then you've got your 11 days, and then you can only join back. I guess it kind of makes you kind of, depending on the day, missed the 2 rounds, but to get you back and available, you have to then have an independent neurologist confirm that you're good to go. And there is some chat about, do they add some leeway to there that, the same independent neurologist can give them the okay, on day 8 or day 9, afterwards. But I think it's probably the way the league was kind of going, and especially with their counter sister league at the moment getting their lawsuit, which we'll talk about later on. I think the NFL had to do something with the way they were trying to protect the players at the start of the season, trying to elevate the head knocks and a bit of rhetoric from the dinosaurs about, hey, maybe it's over the top, but they're very clearly trying to protect the players, especially protect them from themselves. And then seeing a guy like Kalen Ponga this week in this round, getting knocked out in the first couple of minutes of their game with a big head clash, it made a lot of sense. In my opinion, that, hey, let's be overly cautious with it, especially with what we're seeing with long-term effects across all contact sports, really, across the globe. So, and, the NRL's a small drop in the ocean compared to some of the other ones, but it's if they want to have the longevity and stay a league long-term, then they have to be careful and treat their players with care, which is, a lot of leagues don't prefer to do that. They prefer to get them in the meat grinder and pump them in and out. But it's, I guess, a bit of a change of the guard from the way 90s sports in the early noughties was played.
Yep. I agree 100%. I think 11 days is the bare minimum. It should be implemented. It is interesting that it is 11 days. So you said miss 2 rounds. It's very deliberately done so they miss 1.
Yes.
So
depending on the day they play. They play on a Sunday.
Yeah, that's right.
I was trying to figure that one out.
If you play on a Sunday,
11 days is like a weird number to have. So
they do it so you miss the next week and then you miss your training, and then if you need to play the next week after that, then you're in theory sweet to go. We'll be talking about this a lot moving forward, so we probably don't want to harp on it too much in today's episode.
Of course, the thing that everyone's focused on is like, well, what are we going to do when we go through the State of Origin period? Or what do we do when we go through the finals, etc.?
Of course, it's different.
Yeah,
like it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and I think it might have been Billy might have had suggested maybe we have more standalone like separation in the rounds for that reason, like. Say, I don't know, Munster gets a concussion or, the week before it's the first game of State of Origin, but that game's actually the following week. So, yes, that, they've kind of separating out the weekends to make sure everyone's 100% healthy, you get your best guys ready to go. It's hard to cover every scenario, I think, is probably the main thing.
Yeah. It's a massive can of worms. We've seen the NFL in the last few years really backtrack on the way that they approach things, say, 15, 20 years ago. Concussion with Will Smith. Maybe not super historically accurate, but a
bit of Hollywood in there.
Yeah, sprinkle a little bit of Hollywood, sprinkle a little bit of slapping of Chris Rock on there. But it's the story of that being brought to the national attention over there in America.
We'll definitely talk more about the AFL's lawsuit, but a league that has lost their lawsuit was the NFL, and they ended up paying out billions of dollars. So to support their veterans long-term post-playing career. So,
do you think it goes to a point where you just sign a waiver and you say, I know the risks that are involved? It's like opening a pack of cigarettes. Do you think that's the way that we're going?
I think it could be the way the future of the sport may go, but it doesn't hide the fact of the hundreds to thousands of guys and girls that have played this sport for the last 40 years. What do you do with all them that didn't have this knowledge, didn't have this support, or all the amount of research that's currently in the various sports of trying to make it safer for the lot? What do you do with all them? And what have they lost as a comparison? So yes, I think maybe it is the way forward. That I wouldn't surprise me some leagues do add that into some of their contracts, etc. But player health and player, especially in today's sport of sports sciences and all that lot, is very much at the forefront of getting it out. You might see the rare of Tom Brady's playing 20 plus years into your 40s in a dangerous sport.
Definitely outlier.
Definitely outlier. But I guess it's that's what you would rather have longer term players of high quality talent than the meat grinder, having guys that play 3 years and that's it, and they're in and out, and then
NFL not for long.
And then have a long standing fallout of some sort of injury or whatever from their playing career.
Anything to add down there, Monks?
Yeah. So there's been a few clarifications, mostly sources from on Twitter. So I'll start off with old mate NFL physio, NRL physio. Yeah, geez. So it applies to everyone who suffers a concussion. So any Cat 1s are immediately off the field, do not come back on. Any Cat 2s obviously go through the HIA protocol. With Category 2 concussions, clubs can apply for an exemption to the rules, which essentially says it can't have been a Cat 1 concussion. The player is asymptomatic of any concussion, symptoms. Cognitive tests are all back to normal. The player has suffered fewer than 5 previous career concussions, which probably would cut out a lot of players.
Ponga as an example. I think he's had 6 in the last 10 months or something.
I think it was 4, but total he might be.
He might be up there.
So must not have received a diagnosis of a concussion within the previous 3 months, and has no history of prolonged recovery from concussion.
So a lot of rules, in the subtext there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. So by all accounts, it sounds like most players will still miss out on those 11 days. And then also shout out to at League Eye Tests. They've done the numbers for us. There will only be 3 instances in 408 scenarios this season where a player who suffers a concussion will miss the following 2 games.
And that's where the 11 days comes into it. It's
Yeah.
very deliberately done at 11 and not 14.
But I like it. I think we should give the NRL props in this, that they have more of a complete protocol.
Yeah.
And we do talk a lot about the NFL, but for a major league that makes trillions of dollars essentially, I think they haven't quite hit trillion. Let's stay with the billions. Let's stay with the billions for the NFL.
$1 trillion. Never your forte is at the number of zeros, but that's all right.
Always round up.
But a league that has more money to spend on the research and the fact they have like a complete concussion protocol process, and the guys go in the protocol and they're in it for could be quite a while as they work their way through it. It's good to see the NRL try to, have an equivalent, see what the other leagues are doing, and even like the AFL, and try to use that, build on it, and navigate from there.
That's where everything's going to come from, isn't it? You follow the money, you follow the research. Probably whatever happens over there in America is essentially how we'll follow suit. But like you say, it's a proactive step. It's good that they're taking a stand. And obviously we love the warrior aspect of rugby league, but you do worry about the players and their long-term future, and any sort of measure that gets implemented to try to negate the effects of the nature of the sport is a positive step.
Yeah, and my biggest concern leading into this, and from where the season had started, was rugby league likes to rugby league and fuck things up. Again, props that they've probably hit this right on the nail on the head. Like they've followed what the other leagues are doing, and kind of expanded on it for the NRL's specific needs. But I think it's a good step forward. I can't see too much wrong with this. Yes, some people will bitch when your star players are missing big games, but it's for the betterment that they play the next 10 years for your club instead of the next 2.
Yep. Should we start with the class action?
Well, I think we have to keep that conversation going a little bit, but I think we covered it high overview last week with the lawsuit with 60-odd players. I'm not sure if that number has increased since then. I've heard rumours of there's another lawyer with just as big lawsuit, if not bigger, with a mountain players as well potentially coming. But the AFL, under attack, under fire from former players that have had concussions during the lawsuit and what they're going to do in that space. Which with the conversation with concussions we've just had in the rugby league and their worry for their own lawsuit, and the fact that that conversation we also had about the NFL losing their lawsuit, kind of setting a bit of a precedent for former players that have dealt with brain trauma or brain injuries. That it is a big one, and it I guess kicked off this week and will lead into more conversations throughout the rest of the season. And I think we then started talking about Bailey Smith's hit. Why was it Pickett?
Because he Pickett.
Probably the definition of targeting in the NFL, leaving the ground, hitting him high.
Yeah.
You I think we're thinking 4 weeks.
I thought it was 4 weeks.
I thought maybe they'd make a statement, considering the news during the week, that maybe they tack a few extra, and maybe it's like 6 to kind of send a message. But the reports today is it's 2 weeks was the offer, which I think's that's lifetime if you're playing in the NRL. It's your career over essentially with that kind of hit.
NRL or rugby?
NRL.
I'd say that's lifetime for rugby.
Rugby.
NRL, that's like 4 weeks. Like, let's not do that again, bro. It looked pretty bad. It's interesting as well, the conversation about moving forward and, is it waivers? How do we approach it moving forward? How the fuck do you backdate it?
Yeah.
It's past our intelligence, as most things probably are,
yes.
but
which is the point.
How do you do it retroactively?
Yeah, which is the point of, I guess, the lawsuit and the big millions of dollars that they're asking for is that money will go towards sorting out that issue. And whatever that looks like, whether it be support for those players, research, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
That is really the point of the lawsuits. But yeah, not a lot of great visuals during the week. I think Buddy was the other one.
Yeah.
His looked less concerning.
It didn't look as
because
bad.
it looked more like he was protecting himself for the collision, but still it's a tucked arm and hit with shoulder to face.
It looked a bit lazy.
Yeah,
it looked a bit lazy.
Yes.
It didn't have the intent.
No, not leaving your feet, jumping to head height and taking a bloke's head off essentially. Lucky for Bailey Smith, he hasn't dealt with any adverse effects.
No, it seems okay, and maybe that's plays into the 2 weeks as well. They always say that it doesn't. The player outcome doesn't affect it. Bullshit. It affects it. It affects it.
But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. And it'd be interesting as a comparison throughout the year as we track both sports, what different takes they take with it, considering, I guess, NRL's going, well, probably maybe playing catch up a little bit and going very hard after, player health and head knocks this year. But with the AFL and what they do, considering they have a lawsuit already on what they do going forward, it'll be interesting how they manage that and that messaging as well. Because when it gets through the legal system, people that are probably making those decisions, your mums and dads that might have watched a couple of AFL games in the past, what they do during week in, week out during the season might help some of that conversation or hinder it.
Yep.
Anything down the end of the table there in terms of latest word, class actions?
Yes, there's obviously still a lot to get through, but so when we had our potty on Tuesday, we mentioned that first class action that had a bit more than 60 former AFL players. This new one is looking to have least 200, potentially up to 300 players eligible to participate in the class action.
And once that starts going, then the others will start having that conversation and jumping on it, etc. Which is what happened with the NFL. It just gained so much weight. The PA got involved with it, helped get it out, communicated to former players, etc. And there's probably heaps out there that are dealing with their own little demons. I'm struggling post career, and a lot of them will be like, that's could very well be what's happened to me. So. It'll be hard. I guess the big concern for the Australian leagues versus the NFL, which had billion-dollar owners and fuckloads of money to back it up, AFL and NRL really don't. So to have mega hundreds of millions of dollars come out of the leagues could really hurt them, especially considering both are talking about expansion, etc., and what that means. Trying to get $200 million to back Tasmanian team. Does that put all that stuff on hold while they got to pay their big bills? If of course they lose said lawsuits.
Or is it all just a per capita thing, and you think, well, how many people played college football and could have said, or how many people played high school football over there and said, oh, well, I was affected by this. So, maybe it is.
Is it probably even a stronger case for those sort of cases because there are younger?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think we'll talk about it ongoing. It's going to be the big thing, this season for seasons.
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing it as for, I guess, sports science as a field. It's probably one of the biggest things being researched at the moment is, research into concussions, into brain trauma, into prevention, into treatment. A lot of it's all on the cards. It's one of the biggest fields being researched at the moment.
Yeah, how do we prevent? How do we treat? And consent has to be a massive thing.
Yeah, but in two sports that wear, little tidy shorts and small jerseys and not fucking else, not much else, it's going to be very hard for prevention. The talk about it's been about tackling technique and then the rule set around tackling technique and teaching that and enforcing that heavily has shown progress and has shown improvement, but how far you go with it, etc. Before the dinosaurs start complaining about playing Oztag.